Hello and welcome to WTCW's The Department Number Two podcast, the only podcast dedicated to the Western theater in the Civil War. My name is Derek Lindo, and I am one of your hosts.
Hey, folks, and I'm Daryl Smith, and I'm your other host. So, Derek, this is our introductory episode. We're going to discuss a little bit about what this podcast is all about, and let the listeners meet who both you and I, right, the hosts. So, what is WTC, and what can listeners expect to hear on the Department Number Two podcast?
Daryl, I'm so glad you asked. So, WTCW is the Western Theater in Civil War, and back in the summer of 2020, I asked you to partner along with me in creating this website to bring a little bit more to the Western theater, and we have grown a little bit since 2020, I'd say. So, one of the things that we're wanting to do here is just bring more attention to the Western theater, because I think a lot of people have a hunger for that. And in these 3.5 years, almost 4 years,
Yeah.
we are nearing on the website close to 300 blog posts. We've hosted several events, including the annual symposium on the field at Perryville, which this year we're looking for our third annual, looks like.
Third. Yeah.
And the Department Number Two podcast, which is this right here that you're listening to. And we think that, this will help expand awareness to the Western theater, bring more light to the people, the battles, anything that really has anything to do with it. And so far, we've got a lot of episodes planned. We've recorded a few of them already. And so for in the future, people can expect to hear some things on some of the new books that are coming out on the Western theater. We're going to talk to a lot of National Park Service rangers, and then really whatever expert we can find on several of these topics. Because one thing that we've talked about before is that there's going to be an infinite number of topics we feel like that we can discuss in some detail here. So, we've got a lot of stuff planned, and we're ready to get this thing rolling.
Yeah, absolutely. You alluded to the symposium. I'll just jump in there now. It will be our third annual one. We have had some stellar weather for one thing. That's always been
Yes.
a blessing. I think the first year we had 40 or 45 attendees, and then last year I don't know, 55 or 60 or something like
Yeah, I
that.
think so. Yeah.
Pretty
Yeah.
good, pretty well attended. Of course, we had, folks like yourself, me, Dan Masters. We've had Stuart Sanders. We've had, of course, the incomparable Taylor Bishop
That's right.
involved. And so we're looking forward to year number three. We're looking forward to continue to grow it. Just want to throw something out to everybody. It's free.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
I know, Derek, I think somebody told you once, or you may have overheard somebody about how they would have thought they would have paid a few $100 for a
Yeah.
symposium
Yeah.
of
Someone
what
told
we
me
put
directly.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, just to give the listeners a little bit of a insight there, it is deep dives. We pick specific topics and then we deep dive into those specific topics. Last year we cover Terrell's Brigade, Webster's Brigade, town fighting on October the 8th.
Yep.
You
Claiborne's.
handled
Yep.
Claiborne, however you want to
Claiborne.
say it. You did that on Sunday. I mean, well, of course, let's not forget too the Friends of Perryville Battlefield, who are our stellar partners, and we literally could not do this without them.
Right.
They take care of the paperwork aspect. I won't get
Mm-hmm.
into all that legal ramification, and then they host a really just wonderful event at the Bottom House on Saturday afternoon, evening, and so it's just a really great time. So, highly encourage everybody to come and join us there again. We'll be doing Friday afternoon, all day Saturday, and then Sunday morning again.
Yep.
I think the dates, I can't remember what we even said, if we've even really said that yet. Is it October 18th through 20th or
I
25th through
think so.
27th?
Yeah, I think that's
18th.
the weekend we were looking at. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
18th through 20th. Yeah.
yeah, and I do want to add that, on that Saturday night when you're at the Bottom House, getting to listen to Stuart Sanders discuss the aftermath of the Battle of Perryville on one of the locations where some of the most horrific aftermath occurred,
Yeah.
it's pretty amazing. And
Yeah.
I encourage anyone who is able to come to this thing this year to definitely make plans to do so.
Yeah. And just don't eat the beans and weenies. I would just stay away from
Yeah,
that.
avoid the
Something
pork.
about pork
Yeah,
prices, and yeah, well, I won't give too much away for those
They
of
got
you
a
who
good
have
deal
not
on it
read.
though. They got a good deal on
Well,
the pork.
good deal, good deal
They're
on
giving
pork.
it away.
Yeah, I would. If you haven't read Stewart's book on the aftermath of Perryville, you need to buy that book. It's one of those kind of must-haves, and I
Hmm.
don't think folks realize that. But you can take that book and apply the stories there to any battlefield
Right.
in the Western theater. It's the aftermath and the impact,
Hmm.
and of course Stewart's a fantastic gentleman and writer. He's not even
Great
paying me
thinker.
to say that, which
Yeah.
we're losing an opportunity
We'll
there.
send them a bill. We'll
Yeah,
just
right, right.
yeah.
Maybe he'll be one of our sponsors, right? Brought to you by us. So yeah, just some good stuff there.
And by the way, Stewart will be on the show eventually. He's got a new book out, and can't wait to talk to people about that because it's pretty cool. And
Yeah,
it's got another sorry, not Western Kentucky, Western theater connection. A man from Kentucky, and one that we've talked a little bit about
yeah,
when we did our Battle of Richmond tour. So
absolutely.
it's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
Leonidas Metcalf. So
Uh huh.
awesome stuff there. Yeah, good stuff. All right. Let's
So
see. Well, you've lined up some Rangers. You want to tease us a little bit, like, or some of the people that are coming up? I think we've got like a three part episode coming up, right?
yeah, so the first few bits that everyone's going to get to listen to here is it's going to be Stones River connection with Dan Masters, and let me just say that the amount of material that we have talked about is a lot, and it's just under 4 hours. Um, and we obviously divided that up into several episodes, but we didn't even come close to talking about as much as we could talk about on the Battle of Stones River and the campaign. So I think everyone is gonna love listening to Dan. His new book that's gonna be coming out this year on the Battle of Stones River, which will probably be the definitive account.
At
And
least from the soldier stories
right,
perspective. I think that's what he's really focused on is those first person accounts, and then kind of going from that aspect. I think it's going to be definitive from there.
yeah,
Yes.
for sure.
Yeah.
And we've got a lot of cool stuff lined up. So it's podcasting's new for us, both of us,
Yeah.
and so it's been a journey of learning as we go. And so I think we're starting to iron out a lot of the little bumps that we've had, and I think we'll start getting things moving a little smoother from here on out.
Yeah, we've
Hopefully,
we've had some technical difficulties, I think,
yeah.
using
So
different formats and
yeah,
whatnot. And yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Especially
All
with
right.
technology's been the thing. So, but I think it
Learning
works.
curve.
Yeah.
Yep. Learning curve. Good
So,
stuff.
Daryl, I think
Mm.
we can both agree that everyone could use a little more Western theater in their lives. I mean, I know I can. So let's before we start talking about a little bit more about the Western theater, let's just introduce ourselves so that everybody knows who these two people are that are going to be talking, and kind of get to know us a little bit because I think a lot of our listeners probably know our names from the group. They've heard us or seen us, I guess, type away. They've maybe listened to us at some of the tours and events, but let's
Mhm.
just kind of introduce ourselves so they can get to know us a little bit. So, Daryl, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, live in Cincinnati, but I was born and raised in the county north of Cincinnati, so Butler County, Ohio, home to several different regiments from the Civil War. But that's not really even what sparked my interest. I'll get to that in a second. But so I live in Cincinnati. Here with my wonderful wife Jennifer, who is definitely more talented than I will ever be. Um,
I can relate.
work. I'm a call center or contact center manager for a local financial institution credit union here in Cincinnati, Greater Cincinnati. Uh, you know, background has been 40 years of either. Well, I don't want to say 40 years. That might be a little stretch. A lot of years of either restaurant management or call center management of one form or another. So that's what I do. I put out fires. I try to solve issues, progress, process improvements, that sort of thing. My father still is living, 90 years old. And in a way, he's the only reason, and I know we'll get into this in a little bit, but in a way, he's kind of responsible for me even getting into the whole history piece. And I'll explain that here in a little bit. So, but live in Cincinnati, like I said, so I guess, what am I, the token Yankee? Is that what that makes me?
Yeah, well,
The,
yeah.
the,
Let's
the
just. I
token
think that
Yankee?
works. Yeah.
Yeah. So some of you may know, I mean, I do tours and talks. I have kind of my own side business, walkingwithhistory.com. And so I've done several talks at roundtables and historical organizations. Of course, and you and I have done some tours together, but I've also done just several
Hmm.
tours on my own. I focus on places like Augusta, Kentucky, Cynthiana, Perryville, Camp Wildcat. I even hosted an English couple from the UK last year down at Fort Donelson. So I had a
That's pretty cool.
blast doing my first Fort Donelson. It was interesting. Mr. Tim Smith, thank you very much. I might have liberated some of his ideas when he guided us there.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was fantastic there. So that's what I kind of do on the side. I've got a few self-published titles. I'm most proud of the work that I did putting together the War Department tablets of Fort Donelson National
Yeah.
Battlefield, and I'm still working on that. If you have a copy, thank you very much. But I'm working on what I'll call the definitive account. I'm going to try to bring in some more maps and a few other things
Hmm.
to kind of expand it, and then I want to say I'm done with that one and officially put it away.
Yeah.
You're in the process of, or you've just finished a book. You know how difficult it is just not to go back and constantly tinker,
Yeah.
right? And so
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I keep finding myself doing, is tinkering a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. But so Derek, tell us about you.
All right. So, like you said, you have a much better half. I do as well. My wife's name's Allie, and I've got two boys, Ezra and Owen, and they keep us pretty busy. I'm an eighth grade U.S. history teacher, and I've been doing that for, I guess this is year number 14 now, I think. And
Ooh,
it,
getting to be an old man.
I know, I was thinking the other day, I've officially hit the halfway point of my career, so
Oh my goodness.
that makes me feel a little bit old, but I'm not so old where I can't beat these kids up in basketball or flag football that we're about to have here in about a month or so. So we do a teacher versus student game every year, and the
Mm.
students have never won. And every year they're confident that they're going to be the team, and it doesn't happen. So yeah, I'm not quite old enough to get beat by them yet. So I feel a little young, I guess. But yeah, so I do that. I live in Owensboro, Kentucky, right on the Ohio River. So I guess you can say I'm going to be the token Southerner here, and talk like the excited Southerner, if anybody gets that reference from some old albums from back in the '90s there. So, but anyways, my Civil War background, I I guess I got into it back when I was a kid. I mean, it's one of those things where I always loved history, and both of my grandfathers fostered that, and so did my parents. They saw that I had this big interest in the Civil War, and they I asked them if we could go to a reenactment that wasn't too far away, and we did down in Sacramento, and
Hmm.
that it got me hooked. And ever since then, that's been what it's about. So yeah, it never has let up really.
Hmm.
Uh, and thinking back to when I was a teenager and in college, um, and seeing what Taylor Bishop is doing, in college, and when he's leading our tours, I mean, man, I was nowhere near the level that
No,
he's at,
no.
and which is amazing. So we're gonna have Taylor on sometime, but that's what a great kid there though.
Gives
So
us hope, doesn't it? Right?
it does, yeah. And when people say that the young people don't care about history or the Civil War, I have several examples that I can point people to and say,
Yeah.
well, here's a few right here. So
We
um,
should probably do a podcast or a
maybe we
short
should,
segment on that one
yeah,
these days,
I
because
think we should.
I have some insight on that as well. I was shocked to go to a Civil War Roundtable Congress, and they basically said, "Don't even waste your time trying to get young people involved." And I shook my head, and it's
Yeah,
like, if we're going to be old and stodgy and not change the ways that we try to reach out to people, then yes, I can see that. But yeah, that's a whole other topic.
yeah,
Um, yeah. For me, I kind of alluded to it a little bit before. I grew up on a farm, and so we rarely took vacations. And if we did, it was 2, 3, 4
mhm,
days at the most, because you just couldn't break away. We had a couple hundred head of cattle and 100 head of hog and 650 acres of farm to take care of, and so you really couldn't break away. It was mostly my father and my grandfather took care of things, but my grandparents on a vacation, stopped at Gettysburg. Yeah, I said it. I had
Oh,
to because
gasp.
I know, right? And picked me up a copy of Stackpole's, Edward Stackpole's They Met at Gettysburg. And
Hmm.
I was like 8 or 9. And I took that thing to school. I mean, I was tracing maps and then literally using the symbology on the maps to like recreate new maps with like
Hmm.
fighting battles. It was odd. I don't know. I
I
haven't
did
got
the
along
same
with
thing
that.
when I was a kid. So I used to
Yeah.
save
So
those Civil War
yeah.
trust maps that I used to get in the mail, and
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
I did the same
Yeah.
thing.
You kind of move things around and yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And then, because we didn't really take vacations, we would take like Saturday drives though. And so we hit a lot of like Ohio history sites.
Hmm.
And so probably, I had the love of the Civil War, but I actually probably had the Ohio Indian War love more.
Hmm.
Anthony Wayne, Arthur St.
Yep.
Clair, Josiah Harmar, those guys, like 1790s. I grew up close to those sites, and so we would hit a couple of those things every now and then, and so that was kind of cool. So I've always had that history bug, and then it got worse in college, of course, to better or worse. I ran into a bunch of guys, and miniatures, historical miniatures gamers. As a matter of fact, I've got some one 144 scale aircraft on my desk right now. Sorry for the noise that I'm working on a little bit. So I still have that history bug, and so I started gaming, right?
Yeah.
And then we got into everything. You named it, we pretty much gamed it. We were even looking at one point at like Tahitian cannibal wars. I'm not making that up. Like, how do we game that? Like, what would that be like? Um, and so that's kind of how. But as much interest as I have in everything else, and I still have several titles on the Ohio Indian Wars and you name a period of American military history, I have been deep dive into it. I
Hmm.
always come back to the Civil War.
Yeah.
Always. That's kind of right. And it's like 1A and 1B with the Ohio Indian Wars.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like I said, every now and then I'll take a hiatus from the Civil War, but it doesn't last very long, and
No, there's too much.
always
There's just
always
too much
return.
good stuff out there,
There
right?
is. There is.
There's too much good stuff.
So, what about the Western theater? What drew you to that?
Of course, I mentioned that insignificant small college town in South Central Pennsylvania that after the 3 days of fighting, nothing really changed. Um, So, I collected tons of Gettysburg books. I mean, I 60 or 70 or 80 of them probably at different points. And I've whittled that down. And I think, I started getting more and more interested in just the Western theater, always interested in the Civil War as a whole, but just because I could get to a lot of these sites a lot
Right.
faster, right?
Yeah.
So you talk about time and travel and those sorts of things. I'm 2 hours and 15 minutes from Perryville.
Mhm.
Got to say that the right way. An hour from Cynthiana and, 5 hours from Fort Donelson and 5.5 from Chickamauga, Chattanooga National Military Park. And so I think that's really started to pull me in. And I started leading tours at Perryville for my hiking group. That Perryville had expanded and they had about 7 miles of trails. And I'd take my hiking group down there, we'd hike it, and then they're like asking me about it. So I just started doing that and then started to kind of them publicly advertise some of those tours. And then that just took off. Like
Yeah.
that was just, I think there was one tour, I think we had 60 or 70 people on it from 4 years old to probably 70 years old.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I'm loving this. This is awesome. But I think, it's just, proximity, but it's the other part of it too. And I know I've made this joke before and I'll make it probably several more times, but I'm waiting for volume 4 of Horse Poop at Gettysburg to come out because, you just can't get enough of that. And don't get me wrong. It is an iconic battlefield.
Oh, it
If
is.
you're going to get somebody hooked in the Civil War, you take them there,
It is. It's the
right?
gateway drug. I mean,
Gateway drug.
that's what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a gateway drug, the Civil War. And so you take people there, but then those of us who are, I don't know, deep divers, the more you hear about it, the less you want to hear about it.
Mhm.
And I just think also with more recent books on the Western theater, and again, these are more recent books I've always been drawn to, but you throw in Tim Smith and Dave Powell and a host of others, but what Dave Powell did for Chickamauga, I
Yeah.
mean, that inspired other guys to write about Chickamauga that
Yeah.
had not been writing before
Mhm.
about Chickamauga. So I think some of these Western sites are finally getting their due. Also, and I know I'm long-winded answer, a lot of them aren't. I know some of them are, but a lot of them are still in pretty good shape as
Yeah.
compared to the
Right.
expanse in the east. Unfortunately, Stones River is pretty much destroyed. I mean, I think Ranger Lewis said there's less than 20% of that battlefield that's preserved there. But you look at a Chickamauga or Perryville or Shiloh, ad nauseum, and most of those sites are fairly well preserved.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
why are you a Western theater junkie?
Well, I think for me it was, when I was a kid and I started getting this interest in the Civil War, and I started wanting to know what's my family connection to it. And so as I started to learn a little bit about some of my ancestors who were involved, all the battles they were at were things closer to me here, out here in the Western Theater. All of my ancestors served in Kentucky regiments, or there was one that was in a Eastern Tennessee Union regiment, and all of them were in the West. And
Hmm.
so for me, being a Kentuckian, there's not a lot of examples of Kentucky troops in the East. Very, very few.
Just a couple, right?
Yeah,
Just a couple.
and
Yeah.
but I mean, I do love some Eastern battlefields. I love Manassas,
Hmm.
especially the parts for Second Manassas. I mean, that is just I hiked that a few years ago, and man, it was just amazing just doing that.
Yeah.
So I don't hate the Eastern Theater. Some people think, well, if you're focused on the West, do you hate the East? No, it's just I want to focus more on the West because
Absolutely.
this is where I live, and this is what's close for me.
Hmm.
Um,
And
it,
let's be honest. I mean, and I poked a hole at it, but I said nothing really changes after Gettysburg. Well, that's kind of true. I mean, the Army of the Potomac rises up, which I think they needed to do by that particular point, but they're still fighting over the same 90 or 100 miles after that, right? So nothing really changes there. Where out here, this is where the depending on your point of view, it's where the war is either won or lost.
mhm,
And so, I think that's a big part. That's probably a big part,
yeah,
draw for you as well.
yeah. 'Cause, I
This,
mean, if I'm going to take a busload of kids somewhere, it's it's got to be a Western theater site. So we've been to Shiloh, and
yeah.
wanting to do that again. And we were going to go to Perryville one year, but got stormed out, and that wasn't able to happen. But so it's for a lot of it, it's proximity. It's where my ancestors, we have those connections. As I've been researching my wife's family history, her a lot of her family is from Illinois, Southern Illinois,
Hmm.
and looking at some of these Southern Illinois regiments, and where they were at Fort Donelson, Shiloh, and Vicksburg, and
Hmm.
one day I want to take my boys to go see. This is where your ancestor fought, not mine, but yours.
Yeah.
Um, and this is where they were, and a plus for me too. Being from Kentucky, a border state, my ancestors are split. I've got
Hmm.
half are Confederate, half are Union, and in one instance, the daughter of the Confederate married the son of a Union soldier. So, um, that happened afterwards. So, but yeah, and for me too, and it's where if I had to say where I thought it was won or lost, I would have to say it'd be out here.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, but I do love watching the movie Gettysburg.
Sure.
I do love going to Gettysburg, even though last time I was there, I got stung by something. Something flew up my shorts and stung me, and yeah,
Well,
but
they knew you're a Western theater guy.
I think that's what it was. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, but yeah, I don't want anybody to get that idea in their head. But it's just this
No,
is where we choose to focus.
that's right.
If you're as an historian, you got to focus on something. I feel like,
Hmm.
and this is for me. This is it. So it's
No,
what I
you,
enjoy.
you mentioned two things there. One, I didn't get into my ancestor stuff until the last 5 or 6 years. Never
Mhm.
even thought about it. Never even looked. Of course, with a last name like Smith, it's not always
It's not
easy
gonna
to
be.
find that direct
I even
relationship.
got some Smiths in my my
Yeah.
data, and that was
So,
tough.
my first guy that I found who is like a direct ancestor, like he served a whopping 5 weeks in the 3 month version of the 13th Ohio Infantry, discharged, I think, for illness, went home, and then lived well into the 1900s. So I'm like, okay, that's something to hang my hat on. I have found others. I have what is it? How do you say it? Second great granduncle or third, whatever it is,
Mhm,
who fought in the 35th Ohio and
mhm.
was wounded in the left leg at Chickamauga on September 20th, 1863, probably in Kelly Field since he's got a leg wound.
Hmm.
Um, and then he comes back home to Preble County. He's one of the Preble County boys from that particular regiment, and he has a long and productive life thereafter as well. And I've got some of the periphery, a couple on my mom's side, Indiana regiment particularly,
Hmm.
but he was sick for 24 months. I mean, like he never was serving. He was always
Right.
every card is, you know, ill
Sick
at
in hospital.
hospital.
Yep.
Like, yeah, I've got his service records, like 100 pages of affidavits going back and forth saying how sick he was, and all these doctors and all his buddies from the regiment writing, and it's just like, oh my gosh. Um, so yeah, that's part of it. And then I lost my other point there. It had made a comment about oh yeah, the Eastern Theater, like Antietam. I've hiked every
Hmm.
trail at Antietam, including up on top of that mountain.
Yeah.
I've hiked from Crampton's Gap up through Fox's to Turner's and back in the same day, about 15 miles round trip. So I love Antietam.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Second Manassas, and yeah, spot on there. That's one of those battlefields. If it was closer, I would be totally into that.
Oh
With
yeah.
the whole Pope story, man, that fascinates me there.
Yeah. So like, and jumping into Second Manassas here, but like my second year of teaching, I had a student that whose ancestor was in the 14th Tennessee, which was a Western
Hmm.
Tennessee regiment, but was serving in the Army of Northern Virginia, one of
Yeah,
the three Tennessee regiments to serve the entire war in the East.
yeah.
Um, and so she gave me a copy of his diary. And so when I was at Second Manassas, I went to the spot where they were at, where the 14th, where Archer's Brigade was at, and not Archer's. I can't remember what the
Well,
name of. I
it'll
can't
be
remember
Archer's
the.
Brigade at Gettysburg. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I can't
yeah.
remember the name of the brigade commander then, but stood in the place where he was wounded, and got a spitball hit him in the neck, and that knocked him out for several weeks, and he ended up missing Antietam as a consequence of that. But yeah, so uh, getting really there on Eastern stuff, so I guess we better
Yeah, we did,
bring
didn't we?
it back
There,
to the
we're have
West.
to edit that part out. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Edit that out.
So, I think that just shows I love the entire learning about the entire Civil War,
Mhm.
but the West, that's just what I want to focus on.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. All right, so I'm going to jump. I'm going to steal your topic here that you came up with. But what is your biggest interest in the Western theater? Like, what do you focus on? Is it battles,
Yeah.
personalities, something else?
I love looking at Kentucky regiments. That is one of my biggest things, and tracing their steps and going to the spots where they were at, if able, at battlefields. Um, and along with that is, I love the learning about the guerrilla warfare aspect, which is in the partisan warfare, that's what my book's about. So that drew me in. And but if I got to mention a battle that is the one that I just keep going back to, and it's got to be Shiloh. I mean,
Hmm.
just going to that battlefield every single time it's an experience. And I think I have every single book ever written on Shiloh. I mean, it's just I can't get enough of that place. And
Yeah.
and for me too, it's I have some distant cousins that were there, and um, my three times great grandfather. He was not old enough yet to serve, but he had two older brothers. They were in the 26th Kentucky, and
Hmm.
they were both killed on the second day.
Yeah.
And I think that was in what was the name of that field? It was right in front of the Washington Artillery. They're charging across there, and the name of it escapes me. But yeah, so that's one reason. Just being able to go to these places, going to the spot where the 17th Kentucky was, another local regiment, and
Hmm.
they were a first day and second day Kentucky regiment um, on the Union side. So it's Shiloh is that's the place for me. But so, what about you?
Ooh, well, I've always been a battles kind of guy.
Hmm.
The more tactical detail, the better. I just can't get enough.
Hmm.
You can call me pedantic, and I don't care. I really don't. I try not to be, too detailed when doing tours because you got to weave a lot of the stories. But for me, again, the more tactical, you're starting to get more into those first person accounts, and that's where the connection we can still make today for me still resides. And again, I'll go back to Stewart's talk at the aftermath and how he's describing things that are happening to local civilians and the impact there. And I think
Hmm.
everybody who can hear him speak about that, you can relate to that, right? You
Yeah.
can relate to seeing, you know, a soldier's hand sticking up, not because we've seen a soldier's hand, but we can image a soldier's hand sticking up out of the grave because he was dug so shallow
Right.
and then the local hogs ate him up. I mean, like that's some real stuff, right? And so I'm definitely drawn into the battles and tactics, always have been. Last few years, I've been grabbing more biographies. Figure I probably need to know a little bit more about some of these, commanders as
Hmm.
much as possible, and just trying to get a better feel for, well, just a better feel, overall, right? But again, a book can't be long enough for me. I'll
Yeah.
just say it that way. Like, it literally can't be long enough. Dave Powell's Chickamauga trilogy, I think he told me once that they were going to be 800 pages each. And of course, editing, God love Ted Savas. He needs to, keep that marketing and the
Yeah.
editing in line,
Yeah.
right? Has to do that. But like, I'm like, I want to see the rest, right? I
I think
want
if
to,
you're reading that 800-page book, I mean, you're gonna get a workout
yeah,
lifting that thing up.
you're getting a workout. Yeah,
It's dual
absolutely
purpose.
getting a workout. So, it used to be, like I said, and it still is, when I do tours and talks, I focus still a lot on obviously battles, and even when I'm doing cemetery tours and talking about the men in the cemetery, I'm always relating a little bit about their regiment, a little bit about what that regiment was doing, just to give people kind of like that context in terms of the war. Um, so, battles has always been the thing. You
Mhm.
mentioned Shiloh. I've been there once. I was there with you, as a matter of
Yeah.
fact, a few years back, and that's an amazing place. There's no doubt about it. Everybody told me it was, and I thought, well, it can't be any better than anything else. But it's just different, right? It's just different, even just from how they mark the
It
how they mark the battlefield,
it's
right? It's
it
just,
that spoiled me. I go to other
yeah, it's
battlefields now, I'm
well
like, "This
thought
is
out.
different."
Yeah, they did a great job when they organized that park, no doubt
Mhm.
about it. And there is something about Fort Donelson. Don't know
Yeah.
what it is. It's a second generation park. There's two monuments on the entire battlefield. It's it, well, a large portion of the battle, of course, are recovering some of it, which
Mhm.
is great. But they never preserved the breakout, which was a huge mistake.
Mhm.
Just didn't do it. But this is also 1920s, 1930s. Like,
Right.
not a lot of money
A
going
lot had
around,
happened up to
lots
there.
going on, right?
Yeah.
And of course, most of the veterans are gone, so they can't, or they're too old to travel,
Mhm.
so you really can't point things out like, well, we fought here and we were
Mhm.
there. You didn't have that like you did at the five big parks that we have today.
Yeah.
But there's something about Fort Donelson. It keeps pulling me. It's a combination of the naval aspect, the view that you get, from the river batteries. And I just, I've walked the breakthrough. I've walked every trail. I think one day I did a 9 mile loop. I actually walked the driving tour one day, just to get a feel for the terrain. It's got
Mhm.
interesting terrain,
Yeah.
personalities, four Confederate brigadier generals that, which way did they go? Which way
Yeah.
did they go? And it's just all these fascinating stories, and it's early, and
Right, that's the
it's
newness of it
important,
all.
and
Yeah.
it's, until 7 weeks later, there are a lot of casualties at Fort Donelson that get overshadowed by a little place called Shiloh.
Mhm.
So if Shiloh had not happened, I think Fort Donelson would probably be massive national battlefield right now.
Yeah.
But it gets overshadowed. But it's just got so many fascinating stories. Some guy named Hiram Ulysses Grant fights there,
Never
and
heard of him. Huh. We'll have
yeah,
to
you
learn
heard
about
of
him
that
one day, I
guy?
guess.
Yeah,
Yeah, I need to learn about
yeah,
him.
right. So, so yeah, that one, that's a good one. Of course, Perryville, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Perryville. Yeah, it's you
That's my
cannot
new
go
love.
wrong. That place is amazing.
Yeah.
First time I went there, I think it was 98 acres, and I think there's, including what's under easement, it's like 13 or 1400 acres now.
Yeah.
It's just amazing, and
Right.
and you can pick a spot. You're not going to hardly find anybody out there, and you can pick a spot and just you grab Haffendorfer's or Nose book, and you're just sitting there reading, and it's just fantastic stuff.
Right. So, Daryl, let's talk about some of the events we got on the horizon. We've
Yeah,
got a symposium. There's some other things possibly in the works. So,
yeah,
tell us a little bit
yeah.
about some of that.
Well, we definitely have this, the Perryville Symposium. I know you and I, we've done Richmond as a
Twice.
joint tour a couple years, and we kind of got away from that last year, and maybe we'll get back down there
Yeah.
again. I think it's a neat site. It's kind of difficult and easy to tour at the same time. And I know
Mhm.
that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but you got to want to go, and
Right.
I think you have to make, the connection from Big Hill all the way up to the cemetery in
Yeah.
Richmond, and,
Yeah.
and really even farther, go up to Clay's Ferry and whatnot. But, we've been down to Munfordville and Tebbs Bend, and we've had some, we didn't lead tours there, but we had some fantastic hosts in those particular tours. And I've been chatting with some folks about just putting together some other things. And I don't want to let those cats out of the bag yet, because those are far, 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 far,
Mhm.
far away. But I would love to do like a half day Rowlett Station tour
Yeah,
and
that'd be
talk,
great.
and not to drop his name, because he's kind of told me yes, but get Michael Peak involved, of course, get the local folks there involved, and they all seem to be up for it,
Yeah.
right? Love to do that. Excuse me. And I know you and I, we've talked about some other things too, just things we'd like to do, and get those out there. And we've got a Western Kentucky tour sometime that we really need
Yeah.
to have put
Yeah.
together, and we got to figure out the logistics for that one,
Yeah.
and kind of go from there. But I attended the Fort Donaldson Symposium last weekend. This is their second one that they've had, and it's a Saturday of talks. It's a handful of speakers that talk. They also have tons of relics and whatnot there, and some book folks
Mhm.
selling books and those types of things. They have it there at the Stewart County Visitor Center, which is it's a great facility. It just doesn't
Mhm.
have enough parking, but
Yeah.
it's a great facility. Newer building and plenty of space. They had probably 100-ish
Yeah.
people attend
Yeah.
this year. I know John Walsh said he had put out something like 90 chairs, and he put out like another 25, and that's 115 where I come from. And there were some gaps. So I'd say there's probably about 100 people
Yeah.
there all together, and a handful of speakers doing a variety of topics, which was well received, I think,
Mhm.
by all in attendance. Which is fantastic, and not to get ahead of the game too much, and I had a really, really brief conversation with some of the local folks there. Greg Biggs, in particular, maybe doing like a Western theater symposium.
Yeah.
Where, when, all those things, no idea. That's all prelim. I know Greg wants to get with you and I and a host of others, and talk about that. And much like this podcast, I mean, I think the opportunities are endless, from a variety of speakers, right?
Yeah.
Just from that aspect alone. So I have no idea anything else, and I don't want to. I certainly don't want to say this is our idea. It certainly is not. This is Greg Biggs and whoever he's been speaking with and talking to. So hopefully you and I will get down there. We'll meet with Greg on some Saturday and bang out some ideas, and kind of go from there. We got 5,000 people, over 5,000 people on the Facebook group, and
Mhm.
there's a reason, right? There's a reason why they're there. They have an interest in the Western theater, one shape, form, or another, and it just speaks to the interest
Right.
of Western theater,
Yeah.
right? It just speaks to the interest, and I also think that, not to get down again, we could probably have a whole nother podcast on this, but not to get down the whole myth busting
Yeah.
rabbit hole. But we have a lot of things that folks really need to be educated on. We,
Oh,
we
yeah.
still
Yeah.
see some interesting comments from time to time on the Facebook group that it's just been proven time and time again that's not accurate information.
But Daryl, Forrest
Yeah.
really said he told Bragg he was gonna kill him.
No, see,
No, no, he
let's
did.
let's say that one
I
more
I
time.
read it somewhere.
Forrest never, most likely, proven by David Powell in his third volume of his Chickamauga trilogy, never probably had that conversation. The story comes from really late post-war,
Yeah.
like a lot of these myths do.
Yeah.
They come several decades after the war. And well, there's another one that we didn't. I don't. I had to drop off that last podcast recording because I had some technical difficulties. But the story about the bands playing at Stones River,
Yeah.
right?
Dan's got some
Most likely
interesting
a myth,
stuff about that.
folks.
Yeah.
The story comes from one recollection. And if you look at any of the books where it references, it comes from that one recollection. And there's no contemporary accounts that corroborate that story. So it's yeah, it's So myth busting, right? We
I
have a
think we
lot of
need to
myth
have a
busting.
MythBusters episode.
We
Yeah,
probably could
we'll
have
have our own
several.
version of MythBusters, and
Yes, right, right.
we won't be
Civil War
proving
myth
anything true.
busters.
I think we'll be maybe proving some
Yeah,
things false.
yeah.
So,
Acoustic shadow my horse's butt. Right. So,
well,
so some of those things, and I know you and I, we live 4 hours apart, so it's very difficult for us to coordinate things. And you know, as you mentioned, you've got the two young boys and a better half like I do. So sometimes it's just difficult to a two-man band, and we have help also
mhm.
administrating. I can't
Yeah,
speak today.
Tim helps a
uh,
lot.
Tim helps a lot, and
Yeah,
so but when you talk about organizing organizing events and whatnot. So I'm gonna throw this out there because it's episode 1, folks. If you have an event that's Western theater related, if you don't even want to post it yourself, just send us the details.
right.
We want to cross pollinate. We
Yeah,
want to really get people involved and knowing there's a lot that's going on out there.
yeah,
There are tons of events and there's just a slew of things, but it's just Derek and I really kind of, mostly Derek, driving the events on the website. And so if we have that information kind of given to us, then we can get that stuff posted easily, as opposed to us trying to go out there and search for things.
hmm,
So we really want to be, um, I can't even think of the term I want to use there, but kind of like the repository of information for
yeah,
people to be able to go to one stop, hopefully our website, and go, oh man, look, all these things that are
yeah,
going on,
yeah,
and gravitate to. So
yeah, for sure. So, Daryl, I think I can maybe say this for both of us, but if you are still listening, man, we really appreciate it. And good on you. You got to listen to us too ramble and talk Civil War. We really appreciate you doing that. So if you enjoyed this episode and any of the episodes that are coming after this, we do ask you to please subscribe, drop us a 5-star rating on whatever app it is that you use, because that does help it become more visible, helps us figure out the algorithm a little bit, and helps people find the show. So, and that's how people are going to learn more about the Western Theater. So, rate, share, comment. I mean, whatever you got to do for us to get it out there, we'd really
yeah,
appreciate it. So,
something about the algorithms. When you give a 5-star rating, it helps the podcast appear higher,
yeah,
so more people can find it.
yep,
So not because we're worthy of 5 stars. It is more of just trying to help others
that's
find
right.
the podcast.
That's right.
So,
We want to showcase some of these experts that we have on there. So that's
mhm.
that's what we're going for. So if you're online, which I assume everyone is here that's listening, we ask you to visit us at our website, which is westerntheatercivilwar.com, and on there you can find the blog posts, information about the upcoming events and upcoming podcast episodes, and also look for us on social media. We do have a Twitter account that you can, or X, whichever it is you follow, where you want to call it, and you can search for us on there. Just type in the @ symbol, then Western Theater, and also you got to join our Facebook group. It's not a Facebook page; it's a group. So we made it a group so that everyone can participate and comment and post. Um, the more the merrier. And so there, you, the listener and fellow Western Theater student, can be a part of this amazing community that we've got going on here. So do check us out on all those. And we really do think that there is no better Civil War group on Facebook.
Absolutely. Now, keep in mind when you join that group, there's a couple little rules that we do want you to follow. One, we want you to acknowledge the couple of rules that we put up there. But we want to talk about Western theater. We don't want to talk about modern discussion. This is about deep diving into
Right.
Western theater. So if you put something out there like everybody hates Bragg, well, you better have about 1 million sources to back that up, because that one's been pretty much thrown by the wayside as well.
Yeah.
But open to the conversation, of course. Just keep it
If you want to
factual
ask the
and just
question, why do
yeah.
people think that? Well, there you go.
Yes,
You'll get some great
then we
conversation.
can delve in and have some fun with that,
Yeah.
right?
Oh yeah.
So yeah, we keep it very civil. That we admin the group. We kind of keep an eye on it, make sure if it stays civil, and kind of go from there. And like I said, we have over 5,000 members on that group. So I think it's just Western Theater Civil War or something like that, I
Yeah.
believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you should be able to find that really easy on Facebook.
So, and also look for us on our personal socials. We link a lot of stuff on there too. So, Daryl, where can we find you at?
Well, I'm on Twitter, but I rarely post. I got to be honest with you. It's
Mhm.
Ohio Perryville or Ohio Perryville, one of the two. I use LinkedIn a little bit more. I know I'm using it mostly for work, but I will cross post some of the blogs and whatnot that I'm active in. And I do blog for Civil War Augusta on occasion.
Mhm.
There's also the Perryville Ponderings
Yeah.
um, blog, which, kind of slow start, but Jamie Gillum has done a great job of jumping in there and,
Yeah.
and
He
adding
has.
a lot of content. We'll get some more things going on with that because we want to have something kind of specific to Perryville.
Mhm.
Um, and then, geez, oh Pete, I got a couple of Facebook pages as well. But realistically, most of my energy is either with the Western Theater stuff, the aforementioned, or you can find me on walkingwithhistory.com.
All right. So, I'm not on
Now let's
LinkedIn.
hey mention yours,
Yeah.
Kentucky Civil War author,
Yeah.
right?
So I'm I think I'm on LinkedIn, but it's one of those things I've never really used it. So
Yeah.
not too active on there. I do a lot on Instagram. You can look for that on there. Just search for Kentucky Civil War and you'll find that. On Twitter or X, you can look for Kentucky CW. uh, Kentucky Civil War is too long of a name for that, so I had to shorten that up a little bit. And then, yeah, you can find us on Facebook and my personal website, Kentucky Civil War Author. You can. I haven't really done any blog posts on there in a long time, just because the energy shifted to the Western Theater Civil War site, and um, really all I'll be putting on there is some updates about the book. Whenever that comes out,
Yes, but there's a lot of previous content on there though
there
that is
is. Yeah,
fantastic.
yeah,
So you got to even if you don't necessarily go and follow it. I mean, it's always worth just going on looking to see what kind of blog posts you already have out there.
yeah,
So
yep,
absolutely encourage people to do that. I remember that you had posted one about, I think it was Middle Creek,
yeah,
if I
yep.
remember correctly, and I had to go back. I'm playing around doing some searches because of some recent stuff I was working on Middle Creek, and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot I made a comment on Derek's post way back in the day about Middle Creek. So yeah, it's whether he is actively updating it now. There's still a ton of older content on there, previous content, probably
Previous,
a better term.
well, folks, thank you for tuning in with us, and be sure to definitely look out for episode number 2. We have a 3-part series coming out with Dan Masters on the Battle of Stones River that we think you are really going to enjoy, and so keep a lookout for that. And please share this episode and let people know that we're out here now. So, you guys, thanks again for being here with us.
Yes, thank you very much, folks.